Today is Tuesday, the 9th of June, and I'm very pleased to be giving this inaugural webinar on what I hope will be a series of 10 webinars on the subject of biblical archaeology. At the time I'm recording this, our country in the UK is in lockdown. I've been very much enjoying doing tours of museums and the city of Oxford and elsewhere. But of course, during lockdown, those things aren't possible. And therefore, this is an attempt and potentially an opportunity through the lockdown period to spread some more of this information around to people without you having to travel and attend museums. And in fact, being able to enjoy some of what's possible from the comfort of your own homes. Biblical archaeology is an interesting topic, slightly discredited perhaps, but it's where does it all come from? There's still a real passion today for people to know the truth about things, but it's not just enough for it to be true, it must also be relevant. As Paul said in Acts 26 in his defense to a certain king, what I'm saying to you, King Agrippa, is both true and reasonable. And I hope very much that my tours generally and these webinars will be measured against that yardstick and not found wanting. So to help with truth and understanding, but also help with relevance, seeing why the truth of the Bible actually makes sense and actually helps us unlock some of the keys to how to live life in this modern world. A strapline of the tours that I've been doing is that if you're interested in the Bible and you like learning, you will love the tours. And I hope for those of you who are watching this online, as well as those who attended it when it was live, you will find that to be the case. We're going to look tonight at the funeral plaque of somebody called Alexander, or Alexander the Sausage Seller. This is a plaque that is in the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford. It's in the what I call the map room. It's a wonderful room upstairs which has got a large map of the Mediterranean, and there are various artifacts that relate to the period from 400 to 1400 or thereabouts of European and North African history and Middle Eastern history. So in the corner of that there is this funeral plaque. But before we get into the topic in any more detail, I want to say, well, why are we looking at this funeral plaque? It's interesting because I think when it comes to biblical archaeology, then it's helpful knowing you want to increase your knowledge a bit, but it also there needs to be a personal and a human element, and we very much get that with this funeral plaque. Some comments about funeral memorabilia in general. What you're buried with probably gives a good indication of your interests, and that's relevant when it comes to digging up people's remains, whether it's in Sutton Hoo, digging up remains of a Saxon king buried in his longship with certain items of jewellery. You learn a lot about the person from who they're buried with. In the modern day, in lockdown, you can possibly tell from people's, for example, masks. There are signs of individuality there. As it goes on longer, some of us want to have certain types of mask on that reflect our characters. And I want to have a look at one particular memorial, which is actually for my dad, which we only put up a few years ago. And just as an example of a funeral plaque, you can probably tell a few things about my father and about us as a family from this. So let's see if we can find this all right. Here we are. So here we are. So this is the plaque. Much loved husband, father and friend. His name, some dates, and a verse from the Bible. Well, just a small example there. What could you tell? Well, he's a British chap because it's written in English. Although not necessarily. The person could also be American or from somewhere else. You might look at the spellings of certain words. He's clearly somebody who's got some Christian faith, possibly Jewish, but he's quoting from an Old Testament passage. And it's interesting, as well as being a husband and father, it singles out the word friend. which is interesting. You might think that he's from perhaps the more evangelical wing of the church. If he was from high church, you might have a Latin phrase or something like that. But the practice of putting verses from the Bible is perhaps more associated with a certain part of the church. So a few things you can note from that, as well as some facts about his life. Now, if we carry on now, oh, here we are. This is the period we're going to look at. The background is after the recent Christianization of the Roman Empire. Here's a statue of Constantine the Great, and strangely, it's in York, in England. And that is because York was the place where Constantine was as a soldier when he was recognized as being emperor by his troops. So prior to that, there'd been 270 odd years of church history with sporadic periods of persecution, some from Jews, some from other groups, and then some from the state until 312. You had the edict of, or 313, you had the Edict of Milan, where Constantine, as the new emperor, allowed all religions basically freedom. In particular, allowed Christianity freedom. Now, Constantine himself took Christianity as his personal religion. It didn't mean that Christianity was the state religion. That's sometimes misunderstood. That didn't come till later, till 381, and during the reign of Theodosius. More on him later. That's a bit of background, and we are now going to this funeral plaque. Let me tell you about how it was found before we look at it. There was one of the roads out of Rome had a vineyard there, and the vineyard owners found, when they were digging one time, they found that there was some tunnels underneath their vineyard, and it was full of lots of items. Because these were clearly Jewish items, sadly, this was classed as a profane site, which means that all the usual protections weren't there. So they were free, the owners, to sell items as they wanted to from a little stall outside their front gate. I think you might suspect something suspicious if you're in America and they were claiming to sell items that were 2,000 years old, but clearly it doesn't arouse many questions when you're doing that in Italy. You expect to find lots of very old things for sale by the side of the road and not ask too many questions. This site, eventually a number of items from this site, from this vineyard, made their way to a variety of museums around the world, including Oxford's Ashmolean Museum. We're now going to look at what this object is. Here we are. That is size-wise. It's probably about, yes, probably is about so high. This round circular object. You'll see the thickness of it there. You'd see it's on some sort of marble stone. And let's just look now in time-honored tradition, looking at the when, where, what, how, those sorts of questions to understand what we're looking at. First of all, what does it say? Well, let's just go through this. I don't know what your Latin's like. I've got a slight head start on you having looked at this, but let's have a look. Alexander, first of all, you see at the top. So this is a funeral plaque for someone called Alexander. Is that a Scottish Alexander? No, Alexander was a famous name, of course, for the Greeks. Certain famous emperor, Alexander the Great. So here we've got someone called Alexander. And then there's some interesting words there. It talks about bubularus de Marcello, qui something qui x a certain period of time, xxx, I think, annis, or annis xxx, anima bona, we're in the middle, anima bona, and then om. You see there's no gaps between words. This is traditional for Latin. Of course, we struggle with that nowadays. We think, how could you read something with no gaps between the words. But of course, we're used to it now with certain websites like, you know, howtofindanaMazingDeal.com. And it's amazing how with no gaps, we're able to read that with no problem at all. So it's not a particular difficulty when you're used to reading this way. So you can see omniorum amicus on the end of the fourth and then into the fifth line. So let's just go through those parts first. So Boularis means he was a sausage seller. Now you hope that he's not into pork sausages, because there's a giveaway at the bottom. There's a menorah, the seven pronged candlestick, which is a symbol that this was a Jewish cemetery or Jewish burial place, and of course lots of Jewish artifacts found there, and Alexander was no exception. So that's interesting. First of all, we've got someone, a Jew with a Greek name with an inscription in Latin. So very cosmopolitan period of time. And this object, so going back to what it says, it refers to him being a sausage seller from the market, and it talks about his age. He died, he lived for 30 years. And it says he was an anima bona, he was a good soul. Well, isn't that a nice thing to have said about you? It wasn't on my father's father's plaque, but it's a nice description. Then it says, of all the friend. Isn't that special? And then towards the end, it talks about, you know, may he sleep among the just. So a blessing at the end. So it's interesting what's not said here. There's nothing here saying that he was a husband or a father. It's missing. So we conclude from that he was single. But what an interesting chap. And what about the time in which he was living? We know how old he was when he died. But what about the times? When does this date from? Well, this dates from probably the early 500s, late 400s, early 500s. And what was the world like then? What was the Roman world like? This was found in Rome. He was a Roman market trader. Well, things had changed. Quite a lot had happened. I mentioned in 381 the time when Christianity became the official Roman Empire. In 388, a particular event happened which had great significance, and even today, as we ponder about the role of Christianity and the state, this has got relevance. On August the 1st of 388, there was a particularly fiery sermon preached to a Christian congregation, and after that, the congregation were so excited about their faith or incensed about the hardness of heart of the Jews that they went out and burnt the local Jewish synagogue down, which is a criminal act. You can't go around doing things like that. Well, the Roman Emperor Theodosius ordered that the synagogue be rebuilt. What could be strange about that? Well, the only thing was that Theodosius, in his personal life, was a Christian, and he had a relationship with Ambrose, the Bishop of Milan. Now, Ambrose thought this was very much a backward step for the emperor to be ordering that a Jewish synagogue be rebuilt. You can see the clash here between Theodosius' role in his personal beliefs and what he wanted, but also his role as the emperor, and therefore, since the Edict of Milan, they had to really protect the worship of all, or permit the worship of all. And this led to a bit of a diatribe between the two. And Theodosius said, look, here am I, I've got to look after the cause of discipline in my empire. To which Ambrose replied, what is more important? The show of discipline or the cause of religion? Whose side are you on, Theodosius? Whose side are you really on? Surely you should be using your power as the emperor to be advancing the cause of truth, and which you particular, Theodosius, has come to believe is the Christian religion, giving power to the church. Well, of course, this is now an age-old issue for us, isn't it? Even till today, there are people who feel as though if there's regime change in certain big countries, we mustn't lose the protection and the historic rights that the Christian church has had in our country. Perhaps we swear in swearing in ceremonies, we use the Bible. And other people get very worried that Christian values aren't being upheld in our country. But I wonder what you think now. Looking back at 388, was that a good or a bad decision to make? And of course, Ambrose won. Theodosius decided no, the synagogue should not be rebuilt. But you wonder if this set a worrying trend. You see, the Christians had gone from being persecuted before the Edict of Milan to, as time went on, increasingly becoming the persecutors of the church, all around, persecutors of the Jews all around Christendom. And you think about the world that Alexander was in the marketplace. He'd gone from being a minority in a Roman world, a pagan-dominated world, to being a minority in a Christian-dominated world. And you hope that he was well treated by his Christian customers, but you hope that was the case. In fact, he wasn't subject to abuse and so forth, but that others would seek to win him over by love and reasoned argument, and not by force. What else can we see from this? Well, he had these good friends, and that's lovely. And these friends, they said he was the friend to all. Some of these grateful people who knew Alexander, you can see they had the last laugh, and this may give us a sense that Alexander was something of a joker. Oh, buy my lovely sausages. And we can see they possibly had the last laugh, because in fact, if you see the plaque front on, you'd be forgiven for thinking you're actually looking at a piece of round pink salami of some kind. So possibly that is a little last joke given by his friends as a nice send-off to Alexander, who perhaps died a little bit young. Interestingly, the city where that sermon was preached in 388 and where that synagogue was burnt down is none other than the city of Raqqa, which at the time of speaking is the headquarters of ISIS, but probably for not much longer, but a place where there's been unspeakable cruelty handed out in the name of trying to have a state protect a particular moral ethic. Now, those familiar with church history will know that there were issues that came about in Calvin's Geneva in Scotland with the attempts to enforce a particular morality. And there's not necessarily a great history of when Christianity and power are merged, and arguably that's always going to be an issue. So what we've seen today is, from this plaque we can see a little window into the ancient world of the late 400s, early 500s. We've raised some questions about the place of the state and religion to work together. It is good, of course, when laws are put in place by countries that, for example, make it less necessary to have a William Booth and the Salvation Army or a William Wilberforce. So to that extent, of course, we want to see the state they're pushing forward values which are good biblical values. Perhaps there are issues of private life where recognizing that not everyone shares the same Christian faith, that part of being a responsible Christian and following God is to allow freedom to various people to live as they will. As we know, God causes his sun to shine on the righteous and the unrighteous and sends rain on the same. And similarly, the state ought to offer protection of people's private property and their welfare, and not make that conditional upon having a certain set of religious views. And that cuts both ways, either protecting those who espouse a certain liberal agenda, or protecting those who espouse a Christian agenda. We have to be very careful, because this could cut both ways. In conclusion, I would like to invite you, once lockdown is over, to come on one of my tours in the Ashmolean and visit the map room. The Ashmolean is a wonderful museum. It opened on the 6th of June 1683, so we're very close to its birthday, today on the 9th of June. And if you've enjoyed this talk, I hope you'll log in to watch the others in future weeks. Next week, we'll be talking about 10 biblical manuscripts you should know. Here we are as a taster. So here are just some of the things that we'll be looking at together next week. So I hope you can log in and enjoy that. Thank you very much for your time.